My name is Malik Daniel.
Hi, my name is Keenan Smith.
My name is Miguel. Welcome to Power Story.
Season 3.
A podcast from Ray Graham Training Center High School in Chicago.
This season, our thing is stand up for what you believe. Social justice change make a difference.
The Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence is the oldest and largest statewide organization in the U.S. working to prevent the devastation caused by firearms.
And thank you for your lovely day and have a safe one.
Who is responsible for our gun laws and how do they get made or changed?
Oh man, gun law. So you have your city, your local, your state, and your national gun laws. Especially right now because Donald Trump is very friendly to an organization called the NRA. Very little is happening at the national level. So most people who work dealing with legislation are working at the local and state level. For example, here in the state level, we had a victory with a bill called gun dealer licensing. It was great. The governor vetoed it. So right now we're fighting to what we call override the veto. At the local level, Deerfield, for example, just banned assault weapons. In 100 days, the people who own assault weapons in Deerfield have to get rid of them. If you get caught with one, for every day that you have it past the law passing is like $1,000 fine. So they're like, you get rid of your gun, get rid of your assault weapons now, or if we catch you later, you're gonna have like a $5, $20, $30,000 fine, and you're gonna run you out of town anyway. Because if you can't pay that, you ended up leaving. So that's kind of happening at the local level. Chicago used to have a handgun ban that was considered unconstitutional, but a court just said that banning assault weapons is constitutional. I'm sure that's going to be challenged. So you're seeing a lot of like the assault weapon bans, bump stock bans. Chicago's trying to pass a bill where you can only have magazines with 10 rounds in it. And most weapons aren't made with 10 round magazines. So this is actually kind of be like a special magazine would need to be made for Chicago and for all the weapons that people do own. So you're seeing a lot of that. But your state legislatures, your mayors, your city councils, they all make those laws. People like me and our organization and other organizations like the NRA as well say, here's a great law you should pass. And then they debate it and then they pass it or don't pass it. And you're seeing a lot of that at the state and local level, not so much as the national level, because Donald Trump's kind of like, anything that's going to pass is going to be kind of opposite of what I want to happen. So I'm kind of happy with nothing happening. And so we're seeing a lot of that at the national level. So it's strange. But it's I don't know if anybody is interested in politics. Politics are fun, but it's a strange game.
Why do some people think that we don't need laws and rules about guns?
So why don't some people think we need stricter laws? In the gun debate, gun violence, you have kind of two schools of thought. There are some people who think you need a gun because everyone else has them, so the only way to stay safe is to have yours. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where people like the fewer guns, the safer you are. And those are such opposing ideas. I don't know if there is a middle ground to those ideas. And for everybody, you kind of have to think what your own personal opinion is. But I think a lot of people say we don't need stricter gun laws because you hear the argument only criminals are going to have guns, which is obvious because criminals, if you're a criminal, you're breaking the law. But from there, they say, so we don't need stricter gun laws. We need better access to guns so that we can all have guns, because if we all have them, everyone's going to be afraid of everybody. Notice how that sounds? If everyone has guns, we'll all be afraid of each other and none of us will use our guns. That's a strange thing. But think about it. How would you guys feel if, everyone was carrying gun, if everyone around you had a gun on, everyone had a gun, even those people, who aren't the most responsible people or the most careful people, and we're all sitting down going day to day in our lives and everyone has a gun on their hip. And this is usually how I put it, because who here has ever seen two people get into a fight before? So you've seen people get into the arguments that went into physical blows, right? Imagine if there's two guns in that situation. Is that going to stop them from getting into a fight? No, now they're about to get it in, right? And that's my, right now. And we've actually seen that happen before, right? In Chicago, people get into fights. One guy pulls out a gun and he shoots the other. Happens every day. So if you have two guns in that situation, you're probably just going to have two people end up shooting and killing each other. But then it just kind of compounds and compounds because, you know, we want to believe that he's got a gun, I got a gun. So I'm like, you know what? Forget about it. But that's not how we work. Especially here in Chicago. Let's be real. We just don't work that way. He got a gun. I'm going to try to get the jump on him. I'm like, okay, cool. You know, now we're shooting at each other. And what happens if, and this is what I always say, what happens if you get in a situation where two guys are getting into an altercation, they pull out guns, and there's just people around? Because we know that don't stop us from getting crazy. So what happens if you shoot some old lady? Or you shoot some, which actually happens, right? Little kids get shot all the time, right? Drive-bys, guys stand on the corner getting into fights. So to me, from what I've seen growing up in Chicago, more guns would just create more problems. That's how I feel, because I've seen what happens when just half the people have guns. It's still craziness. So to me, it's like, if I could take those guns away, you know, because we say, you know, I have no problem with two guys getting into a fight. Right? You got a disagreement and y'all getting into a fight, get into a fight. That used to be in the 70s before the guns were like really, you know, the gangs used to have the fights with the baseball bats and the chains, not acceptable. But guess what? Guys would, you know, walk away from it, live to see another day. Now, once that gun comes out, things are crazy. And I just feel like that is not more safety. You know, I have lived in places where there were a lot of guns. Alaska is a place I lived in for 2 years. Everyone there has a gun, and the gun violence there is mostly suicide. You see a lot of suicides in Alaska, but not so much like shootings and gang violence. But here in Chicago, we're just different people. So I tell you, Chicago is just a different place. We're a different kind of person, and that just creates a lot of issues with guns. So I don't feel safer with more of them, because I hate saying it like that. I would say Chicago doesn't know how to act, though, right? We show up and we show out. So my man, no, we show up and show out. So a gun just makes that a little rougher.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, I feel like guns are a coward weapon, and that's why people buy them.
That's a good one. You know what? This is how I explain this. And there's a story that directly relates to that question that I don't like really bringing up, though. So I'll try to tell it in a roundabout way. It's kind of it's a story I don't like to bring up a lot because it's not a good story. One thing we don't talk about is there is a seductive quality to guns, right? If I have a gun, it's one of those things. If I walk in this room, let's say we were just all dudes and a lady, and we're in some random place, and I walk in, I say, okay, everybody do what I told you to do. Half of y'all gonna look at me like, who are you? I ain't doing nothing. Shut up, blah, 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 blah. Right? You're going to start wrapping your mouth, because that's what we do. But if I walk in here with a gun, go clack, clack, everybody get out on the floor, guess what you're going to do? You'll get out on the floor, right? There's something, guns do provide power. It's not real power. You know, it's not real power. It's a false power, but it is a power nonetheless. You'll do what I told you to do because I have a gun. And I think when people say that's kind of like a coward's way of approaching things, there's some reality to that. I always not joke around, but when I get into altercations or arguments, debates with members of the NRA, you know, they'll have this thing, you know, all yada, 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 and they're talking. I'm like, you know what? You're the one who needs a gun to do your business. I don't need a gun to do my business. I'm a man. If I die tomorrow, I die tomorrow. But you ain't gonna see me running to get a gun to handle my altercations, to handle safety of myself in public. I just don't need one, right? Between the two of us, that takes courage. So which one of us is really the punk here, you know? And that's one way I approach it. It's not necessarily the nicest way to approach it, right? I don't encourage you to call people names and such, but you know, it's a real conversation to have. But when I was in the Army, I knew the power of my guns. I carried 2 weapons at all times. And if I told you to do something, you did it. Because if you don't, I had a 9mm Beretta. If that comes out, I'm not asking again, right? And, you know, when you're dealing with people, that was reality. You know, sir, I need you to do something. And if they just looked at you like, why? You know, click, click. Sir, I need you. They moved immediately. And there's a power to that, right? And you start to get into this mindset. People going to do what I tell them when I clack that 9, right? Clack, clack, clack. It's real. It's real, you know? And it's something to that, because you do. It's a false sense of power that you fall into. You'll do it because, and if, you know, this is not big enough, I have a, you know, now I've got a, you know, big gun on my back. If I clack that, things really getting, you know, that's a louder clock, you know, now, you know, it's sad, but it's something that we don't talk about. The mental effects of gun ownership, and also the mental effects of if I do have a gun and I shoot somebody in public, what's the mental effects of that happening? You know, what happens if you kill somebody? We don't, well, other than going to jail, like what happens in your brain? We don't ever talk about that, you know? The depression, people, you know, even killing someone legally or rightfully, depression, PTSD, the nightmares, all that stuff comes into play and we never talk about it.
What about like post-traumatic stress?
Post-traumatic stress syndrome. When I came back from Afghanistan, I don't think I came back with one guy that didn't have some version of PTSD. You know, living in stressful situations, doing stressful things, and police officers. You've been a police officer for 10 years. Let's say you've been involved in 1 or 2 shootings. What are the mental effects of that, right? And we don't often talk about that, but how many police in Chicago are running around PTSD? And we know if you know what the effects of PTSD can be, you're talking about people who are dealing with a lot of issues already too. And we never talk about that side of gun ownership or gun usage. And that needs to be a bigger discussion for sure. And that's a great question, 2 great questions for sure.
Do you think it will help?
Yes. I think we need background checks for all weapon sales, no matter where, what, when, or how. If you're buying from a neighbor, if you're buying online, if you're buying in a store. An example of this, if you go to Alaska, I moved up to Alaska, and when I flew up there, I called my mom. I said, Mom, my plane landed. I'm heading from Fairbanks to Tok, which is the town I lived in. She says, you know what? On the way, you should stop and get a gun. I was like, Mom, you can't just stop and get a gun. She goes, sure you can. I said, no. She goes, sure. I looked at the guy and said, hey, can we just stop and get a gun somewhere? He goes, yeah, you want to stop? I'm like, no, but I could. It's totally legal. Go up there, show your driver's license, walk out with your gun. That's wild. And there are states around us that are like that. So, you know, for me, if you buy a gun, you should have to get a background check. 100%. I would even put a 24-hour waiting period on that. If you buy it on Monday, you can't pick it up till Tuesday. You buy it on Tuesday, you can't pick it up till Wednesday. And then, you know, from there, you may or may not know the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, cannot use federal money to study gun crime. If we change that, I think that would change a lot of things naturally, because their research will kind of say what's working and not working with guns in America. And as we know, a lot of stuff is not working. But I would say basic universal background checks. You buy a gun, you have to do a background check. And some of y'all just ain't gonna be able to get guns. Let's be real. You know, some of us won't be able, I can. But some of us won't be able to get guns. And from there, that's gonna change things immensely.
So how do we stop gun violence?
Oh, man. To stop gun violence here in Chicago, we really need to work as a team. Young people, I mean, you guys are the ones affected by gun violence, right? I have gray hair. I shave my head sometimes, but as it gets warmer, I keep my hair longer, right? People are like, shouldn't you shave your head in the summer? I'm like, yo, this is, right? I'm old. There are people out here trying to shoot old heads. They're out here trying to shoot young guys. So if I shave this off and start to look young, you know, what you represent, I ain't represent none, cat, you know? So there's some value to this old hair. Young people are the ones getting shot, being injured, and also shooting each other. So as young people, you guys have to work together. Like, how many of you all in this room know someone who owns a gun, right? Someone your age. Absolutely. Someone your age, 1, shouldn't have a gun. So that's step 1. But 2, are you communicating with that person? Like, my man, you know, what are you having that gun for? If you're using it for personal safety, if you end up using it for that fact, you're going to go to prison regardless, even if you're in the right, because you shouldn't have it to begin with. That's a felony. Immediate. You'll never own a gun again. You're going to go to jail. So we need to be having these conversations with our partners. You know what I'm saying? From there, as a community, we need to be holding our politicians accountable. What are you doing to decrease gun violence? Do we like to believe all the politicians are doing stuff? Guess what? They're not. And if they're not, you got to vote to get rid of them. So I hate to sound so callous about that, but yo, if you're not working for me and that's your job and you ain't doing your job, what would happen if you don't do your job? You get fired. Bye. And so, you know, we kind of have to do those 2 things and work together. And we have to keep all of our politicians at all levels of government accountable. But we also have to keep each other accountable. You know, if you know somebody in your neighborhood is creating a problem in your neighborhood, you got to find a way to deal with that. Whether you go to the person one-on-one, you know, or if you have to, you know, get the police involved. You know what I'm saying? I personally am never going to let someone destroy my community or a group of people. It's just not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Because This is where I live, and I want to be safe. I want my kids to be safe. I want my parents to be safe. When they come around and you're causing that not to happen, you have to go. You can either leave, you can act right, or we can have the police come in and deal with you. But this has to change. And I think more Chicagoans have to have that mindset. You know, they say only 1,400 people drive most of the crime in the city. Think about how many people, 1,400. That's like less than half some of the high schools in the city. So if only 1,400 people creating all the problems, that's easy. To me, that's an easy problem to deal with. I'll go to you one at a time, like, my man, fix what you're doing. Man, who you to tell me? Well, okay. I'm going to call the cops. We'll deal with it, you know what I'm saying? You know, you hear this in Chicago, this idea of not being a snitch. One, I'm not a snitches. Criminals can only be snitches. I'm not a snitch. I'm a law-abiding citizen who wants to live in a nice place. So if I got to call the police on you, you got to go. Sorry. You know what I'm saying? And there's a bit of personal courage that goes into that. But, you know, we have to work as a team, you know, because, you know, we all live here together. I just don't understand how, you know, people can all live in one place together for most of their lives and still not realize that you're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. We're not going nowhere, you know, so we have to live together. We have to make this the best place possible. So we have to do that, you know, and work. That's a job, you know, keeping things nice is work. You know, anybody here ever have a nice pair of shoes? You know what I'm saying? You got some nice kicks. That's work, right? Who has ever had a nice pair of white kicks? That's work. Keeping them babies white is a job. You know what I'm saying? You have a nice car. That's a job. So if you want to keep a nice community, guess what? That's a job. So we need to do a better job of working together and then holding our politicians accountable, the police accountable as well, so we can all work together to make it a better place. So I think that's it for sure.
Power Your Story podcast is produced by students at Ray Grant Training Center High School in Chicago.
With production support from After School Matters and the Creative Impostor Studios.
Today's episode is produced by
Miguel Morales.
Keenan Smith. You can find our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio, Google Play Music, and the web at poweryourstorypodcast.com.
We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Power Your Story Podcast.
Follow us, subscribe, leave a review or comment, and share our show with a friend.
Thank you for listening, Power Your Story Podcast, and have a wonderful day.
Turn up all the way.